Hello and what is up everyone, it is Hachi from the Art of Dota, and in this video I'm going to be talking about how you want to approach the early game as a Spirit Breaker. Now, the early game for Spirit Breaker is probably the easiest part of his game. The thing is, in the early game, everyone is forced to split up because of how the laning stage works, right? Each core has to assign themselves to a singular lane for the most part, and they're going to try to get as much farm and experience out of each lane. Now, the thing is, Spirit Breaker thrives on enemy heroes splitting up, so the fact that they will be forced to split up in the laning stage if they want to be efficient in terms of getting their experience and farm, you're going to be able to punish them once they move too far out of position. Now, the thing is, you can't just randomly charge whatever target you see in the early game, especially against certain counters to Spirit Breaker that will be able to cancel your charge or survive your charge and turn it around. You're going to have to be a little bit careful with how you decide to use your Charge of Darkness. So the first thing that you need to keep in mind with Spirit Breaker early on is you don't want to just spam your charge starting at level 1. You really need to have a purpose, and that purpose is to try to get your level 2 up in a timely manner. Now, level 1 Spirit Breaker is very weak. With just Charge of Darkness skilled up at level 1, his charge won't do any damage if it doesn't have a point in Bash to go along with it. So you really need to prioritize getting that level 2, and sometimes that means just sitting in a lane with one of your cores and sapping it from them. And it's perfectly fine for you to do that as long as you don't sit there forever and continue to sap experience from them. Another thing that you need to keep in mind in the early game is you don't always have to be charging in. Sometimes you're going to want to position yourself in a position where you could actually just counter gank or just wait for an opportunity for a charge. For example, if you're playing against a hero with a defensive ability such as Astral Imprisonment for OD or something like a Puck Orb, you're going to want to wait for them to use their defensive abilities, especially with Puck and OD that tend to like to use Orb or Imprisonment to farm, and then you're going to charge, because otherwise, if you don't wait for them to use their defensive ability, you're going to charge in and they're just going to orb away, or they're just going to Astral you and then walk away, right? And that's when you're going to want to be a little bit more patient with your charge. And of course, if the enemy forward positions or enemy roamers are missing, you're also gonna want to just wait for them to show. And then once you hit level 2 on Spirit Breaker, if you charge through, so for example in this game, if Pudge and Earth Spirit try to gank my Shadow Fiend and I get a good charge through, since they're both melee heroes, with Bash, I'm going to be able to charge in and stun them both and allow my team to turn around the gank, as you saw what just happened there with the Axe. Now, another thing that you need to know in the early game is forcing TPs and forcing rotations is key to playing a good Spirit Breaker. Now, you're not always just trying to get a kill once you charge a target, right? Ideally, you'll get the kill, but sometimes it's good enough to force rotations from the enemy heroes. And you need to know when to chill out and back off once those rotations come in. And sometimes you're not going to be able to get away, as Spirit Breaker is very slow early on, especially without boots. But if you do get away, it's going to be game winning, because not only are you forcing those rotations, but you're also surviving the counter gank and living to fight another day. But again, even if you do die, as long as you force enough rotations to make it worthwhile, it's actually okay for you to start dying a little bit in the early game. But again, the ideal scenario is you being able to escape. So you do have very good escape ability. If you do have a TP scroll, if the enemy heroes commit their stun early on, you're gonna be able to TP out. Or if charge comes off cooldown, again, you're gonna be able to use your charge to charge away. Now, again, you don't want to spam charge randomly. Now, another thing that comes along with that is you need to know your teammates' power spikes. Now, it's really important to know if your core in your lane that you're charging into can actually secure the kill on whoever you're charging. Now, for a hero, for example, like Shadow Fiend, I'll probably wait until he gets like level 3 before I really commit towards a charge, as level 1 Shadow Fiend doesn't do much. Level 2, not bad, he'll have raise at that point, but level 3 is when he usually will put 2 points in raise, and that's where his burst damage actually becomes deadly. So you're going to want to know each and every one of the heroes on your team's power spikes, and this is usually going to come with experience. And I can't really go over, of course, every individual hero, but you need to think about that before charging in. Again, you don't want to just charge and then from there see what happens next, right? You want to kind of know roughly what's going to happen once you charge in. What heroes have TP scrolls? What heroes are potentially already in the lane? So again, you don't want to just go full Rambo, as that's how you end up feeding the early game with Spirit Breaker and being useless. But what you can do with Spirit Breaker is you are the ultimate rotation forcer, or the ultimate space creator, right? So if you're charging in and playing real aggressive on the mid lane, most likely if you're playing against players that know what they're doing, they're going to TP in and try to assist their mid player. But what that's going to do is it's going to give you information to make your next play. Now, if I charged mid and I see obviously that a Pudge or a Earth Spirit TP'd in this game, I'm going to just go to another lane. There's no reason for me to go mid anymore. I force their rotations, and unless they're really going to threaten a kill onto my Shadow Fiend, I can just be safe to go charge their Sven. And now what are they going to have to do from there? They're either going to have to try to get a kill on my Shadow Fiend, but if he's a good player, he'll just play safe, or they're going to have to walk top and go help their Sven, because otherwise Sven is going to take a ton of harass from my Nature's Prophet and potentially even die. And that's your advantage as a Spirit Breaker over other 4-position support heroes, as you have this global charge ability, whereas other 4-position supports or other roamers will have to walk. And walking, of course, is a lot slower than just charging in, ignoring all terrain. Now, that's where you'll actually want to abuse players that know what they're doing, right? So if the enemy team is playing properly, they're actually responding to your ganks with TP scrolls, and they're not just letting their mid player die, you can just let them do that, right? Let them TP in. But from there, you know that they don't have TP anymore. It's on quite a long cooldown, and you can just make plays happen elsewhere on the map. Don't feel forced to go into one lane. You can always just play on the other opposite side of the map, and what's going to happen is you're going to force the enemy team to spread their resources thin. They're going to chase you around and scramble around trying to deal with this Spirit Breaker, and it's going to create weak points in other lanes for you to abuse, or if you're not abusing those weak points, your teammate can abuse those weak points. So for example, in this game, with all the action that has happened in the mid lane as well as the top lane, my Medusa pretty much completely free farm. So this is what it means to make space. So even if we are trading kills back and forth, usually because Spirit Breaker is able to play so active on the map, it's going to pretty much create a lane for your team where they're going to be able to free farm, because the enemy team is so worried about this Spirit Breaker charging onto their mid lane or charging onto their carry that they're going to completely forget about this hero. Now, charging randomly is something that a lot of people do, but thinking beforehand before you click that charge button is something that will make you not only a good Spirit Breaker player, but a great Spirit Breaker player. Because trust me, a lot of people who play this hero don't really think too much about their next move. They just kind of charge in and play each gank one at a time. I mean, they just kind of charge in, hope for the best, and usually it works out because of how uncoordinated enemy teams tend to be. But a lot of times you'll end up feeding, and for me, I'm trying to show you how you're going to avoid that.